Alright, this is me a super quick update. I'm gonna add to this.
Wrapped up with Chinese cigarettes there. Coming now, I got some of your most played songs of 2024.
I said I don't want that. I didn't want to speak. Guess I didn't like that. It's past my shelter, digging pull up now. Pissing around when I should you. You said something. You said something.
Here I sit alone once again with my eyes wide. Don't you think I see the fallen angels coming fly by? Mama keep me getting contemplating, keep my high mind. Here I'm smoking weed because I think it got to drive by. Staring at the corner where the woman's in the reaching at me. It ain't nothing good if I don't get it. It ain't creeping, that's me feeling like I'm lost. Don't wanna be lost, so bad full of cheese. Full of lots, no cracks at the east spot. Cash in my sock hole, in my little knees. Back in the pothole, she like me. Love me to the hill, trying to not know. I know we been acting out the side. Hold my heart cold, get some OC. Plus, got that pot gold in my little key. Glass I would not know. Want a lot of green, niggas know I'm hot cold, smoking on the green, nigga, that's how I go. Maybe think it's better over time. Maybe you be right, my baby, know the niggas speaking me if I go sit outside. Every single night I'm in that dressing all of my mind. Conversation with my consciousness, smoking on that what they call, licking on the sheet. Ice cream, I made a fall. Fuck niggas playing with their hips. This is not a squad. Niggas getting heat stroke. Like 50 stars, trying to get this heat on. Face like when I be tall. Real gone with it. Being pissed, I hope I can't escape. They're way too young to bring a mirror. Think I see a face. Feel like something missing. All you get. Listen what I say. Where my other side at? Nigga, where my blood at? Nigga, where my cuz at? Ocean, where the floods at? Moments in this pain, then I feel right now I love that. Feeling that it's space in my brain like I'm bugged now. And they love my chain when it swing like a
Hey, how you doing, Tommy? How you doing? Thank you. Open it. Hopefully it doesn't drip too much yet. Bro, why there's no one? This is underrated. That's the most common comment that I get. It's because, what succeeds is like what's been approved by the mainstream. Because most people do not know what to do with something new like this. Something that's coming from somebody is actually like trying to commit to being completely original as much as possible, and making their own thing. Maybe if I was drawing Boruto or JJK or something, you'll see a lot more people fanboying. Most people don't understand. They find something that's has that scent of new, of undiscovered, underground. This is actually a comic book I've been developing for the past 17 years. And it's a very long story. But it's a story I believe will wake up the world and help people hopefully identify the lies and manipulation games that the powers that be are playing constantly. Thank you, Goddess. I appreciate you. You like this much refined taste? Thank you. Yeah, this story is honestly, I'm a writer before I'm an artist. So everything that I end up drawing is because I've put some time writing up the story. In this case, this story, it's sort of like Men in Black, except instead of aliens, you have like fairy tales. Trying to blend into human society, pretend to be human in disguise through various technologies. And it's about these cloud agents in black who have to keep humanity asleep to the truly magical world that they live in. Called Demonation. A lot of people assume, because they just, when they hear demon, they automatically assume it's like a Monster Hunter type story. It's not anything like that. It's a story with a whole bunch of people keeping secrets in a magical secret world, and us learning the truth, and the people, humanity specifically, barely waking up to that truth. Not all of them. There's some humans that are awake in the story that know what's going on. But yeah, you would assume they're the good guys, but they're actually not a lot of the times.
Finishing up with Crystal Castles. Next up, I got a vibe. It's a little heartbroken, but don't worry. It's not a
From
vibe
Shuas.
that's
Thank
leading
you
off with
guys. I
everyone
appreciate
else.
you. I've noticed some other artists on here, when they're inking, they do this like kind of chicken scratch method, and I would say be careful with that when you're inking, because unless you're trying to go for a very sketchy look, you're gonna end up making your inks look extremely sketchy rather than clean or complete. So a lot of artists I've noticed have been doing that. You want to be really intentional with your lines when you're putting them down with inks, and you want to try to approach it at whatever angle is best to get the cleanest line. So it's okay. I get it. You want to just ink it and get it over with, but it's really important that you make sure your ink lines are good quality as much as you can. And this goes for the traditional artists. The digital artists, you guys are in your own kind of world where you could just press Control Z. Nothing's really consequential unless you force it to be. So you get to undo things and stuff. You get away with a lot, but the traditional artists, they're gonna have to really be intentional with the lines they're making. And obviously, you guys too, digital art, but you don't have much of a consequence. You know what I'm saying? And one thing I would say with digital art, you don't want to be constantly zooming in and doing your art. Right? A lot of times you end up having an art piece um, that you're drawing digitally, and you're drawing it in segments. You're like zoomed into the head, you're zoomed into the arm or whatever little part, and you end up drawing it in segments and parts. And you have to kind of see the whole thing and approach the whole thing at the same time. You have to develop that skill. A great way to develop that is draw from life. Take a figure drawing class. That'll really help you to understand like how the whole thing looks like, opposed to just drawing it in segments. You end up creating like a almost like puzzle piece type of vibe to your art when you draw like that. It loses kind of like a harmony to it, so you kind of have to check it. Let me see the comments here. I'm traditional, so I don't understand that much digital too, but my digital is really lazy, like making your. I love the sketchy and clean mix, like semi-realism. Yeah, I like seeing that it was definitely human made, and so you want to have some of that rawness, but you don't want to be so raw that it's not clear. You know, that's the balance you have to have. Be raw, but make sure that it's clear. No matter how abstract it gets, don't sacrifice clarity unless you have like a narrative reason to do that. Like you're telling a story and you're trying to be mysterious by making a figure kind of like shadowy in silhouette, who's maybe going to get revealed later in the story. So right now I'm just kind of doing the outlines, but I'm not uh, doing a flat outline where it's all going to be the same line thickness. I'm trying to think about how the outline is wrapping around the form, and when does this thick line get thinner, right? To imply, the changes of the form. Okay, so for it, if you don't want to have art that looks flat, that you are not giving everything the same thickness in the line. You want to think about how the line is thickness is telling a story of where it's changing, where the character's arm, for example, is changing in its plane and its dimensionality. Right? So you saw me do thick, thin. I love abstract with some cruelness. I'm not a big fan of gore. I mean, I do like to see, if I'm reading like a story, I do like to see that it gets, there's some consequence to it. And sometimes that does mean to, a little bit of cruelness, gore, I guess you'd say. But I don't like it for its own sake, It just takes me out. Really, there's like a piece of paper stuck out. This chunk. It's true. Yeah, and by doing this sort of outline, this dimensional outline method, right? Outline cannot be flat. You screw up your image unless you want to draw like 2D style, flat, characters like Samurai Jack, and that's your intention. Um, you have to be very aware of what your lines are saying, what they're implying, what they're wrapping around, how does it read from an outline to the inline, the details. It's a little tricky because the ink right here is so thick right now. I don't know why. You don't have to work it close. Just draw that outline. Villain character gets their end with the deserved creative gore scene. Mm. You mean like they get like blended in a meat grinder or something like that? Like that's pretty gory, bro. Depends on the level of gory and whether that makes sense for them to go out that way. It has to have some kind of underlying metaphor. You don't want to. That's the thing with storytelling. There's a lot of like irony, and you want to have sort of ironic underlying metaphor, some kind of subtext that tells you, like, okay, this character's arc, you know, he got it. He went out the way he kind of deserved to go out because of how he lived his life, what he did to others, and the specific way he went out. It's really specific to kind of his whole poor bad behavior, his whole like, you know, whatever he did or she did that kind of would be symbolized by their sort of demise. Thank you, human. Appreciate you, bro. I'll give you an example. I think from all the shonen mangas, the one that's most self-aware, at least in the beginning parts of the story, would be One Piece. And a great example is we have Sanji's first backstory that we get in the story, and we look at how the captain was this merciless captain who was known to be really good with his kicks, his legs, and when he robs the ship that Sanji is on, right? Everybody's terrified. Sanji is in the chef's kitchen, and he's like, he's scolding the other chefs for eating the leftovers of the customers, and they're telling him like, "Hey, it's food is food. We don't want it to go to waste, basically." And Sanji just tells him that's gross, basically. And during this crazy storm and this captain attacking their ship, what ends up happening is the ship capsizes and Sanji is gonna drown. And the captain, who is known to be so vicious, sees this and actually saves Sanji, having to uh, go into the water and get him from drowning. And after they wake up on an island alone in the middle of the ocean. And on that island, you find that Sanji's given this tiny little bag of food. And this captain guy has this huge bag of food. At least that's what Sanji assumes it is. And he tells him, that's because I'm bigger than you and I need more food. And Sanji's pissed about that, but he can't really argue. What is he going to do? He's a little kid. And as the days pass by and they are on opposite sides of the island, keeping watch of for any ships that are passing by that could save them, what ends up happening is no one saves them. And they begin to get hungry and hungry. And Sanji ends up running out of the food. It's been weeks since they've been on this island in the middle of the ocean. So he decides, out of hunger, starvation, that he's gonna go and kill the captain that's on the other side of this island. And when he goes over there, he finds that big bag, and he's so hungry, he cuts into it. Nobody has opened this bag yet. So he's like, what the heck was this guy eating the whole time? When he opens it, a bunch of treasure comes out. And that's where Sanji realizes this guy hasn't eaten anything, and he gave me the only food that he had, right? And he goes to see if the old man, that captain, is still alive, and he sees the captain only is alive because he ate his own legs, which he's known for across the seas for being vicious with his kicks. And he tells Sanji, basically, he's like completely shocked, crying, can't believe this guy sacrificed his legs, just so Sanji could survive and have some food. He tells him that he wants to use that treasure so he can buy a boat in the middle of the ocean, and that he's going to quit being a pirate and have a boat in the middle of the ocean that has a restaurant on it. So no matter what, there'll be food available for people who are like stranded or something. And that's the backstory of these two characters. And you see how the villain, the supposed villain in this arc, there's a twist to it where it turns out, this guy isn't so bad. He actually is willing to sacrifice his dreams, his goals to help another, right? Something so precious to him. And he sacrifices his own leg. He eats his own leg. That's pretty gory, right? We don't need to see that part to have the effect that it's desired, right? If you were to just see him eating his own legs and he showed us, it would take away from the story in that scenario. It'd be like, ugh, I don't want to see that. It's gross, right? So you have to be careful with goriness because you end up just doing it for the sake of doing it. Gantz does it for shock relief, right? And it is good for the story because of how intense the situations they get into in Gantz, Gantz. But for something like that One Piece scene where I told you about with the captain and Sanji as when he was a kid, if he were to show us that gore, you know, of that captain eating his own legs, you know, it would actually take away from the story. So you have to be careful with it. All right, guys. I think I've done enough of a little update to this. I'm not trying to finish it today. I'm just kind of priming. I got other things, other bigger fish to fry. So appreciate everybody who tuned in. We'll do like a little work in progress video of this. And yeah, thank you guys. You have a good one, all right? I'll see you later.